Hey guys, it's Sammy Warrayat, the host of the Successful Millennials podcast. I appreciate you joining in and listening to another episode geared towards proactive and driven millennials born from 1990 to 1997. For those of you who are first-time listeners, welcome. This podcast is specifically geared towards those people born in 1990 to 1997 and are trying to find motivation as well as improve some tactics of how to achieve success in the 5 major categories. I invite you to listen into the journey as I do deep dives, as well as bring in some emerging experts to discuss these categories and our experiences and how to make progress with them. The reason I picked this specific age range is because I wanted to highlight the rise of social media and smartphones technology coming up in the formative years rather than as an established adult. Myself being a millennial in that age range, I was in high school when social media really took off, as well as the iPhone, and that changed the way we grew up almost. Whereas generations who were born outside of that age range either was too young and was born into it, or they were already an adult and kind of fully developed. So what are these 5 categories? In no specific orders of importance, it's money, happiness, career/purpose, relationships, and that covers intimate, familial, and social, as well as health, and that's physical and mental health. Guys, I would love it if you can give me a review or DM me on Instagram at FinanceZilla or email me at financezilla@gmail.com. I would love to hear your feedback as well as topics that you'd like to learn more on or things that I can do better. I am a big fan, as you probably have realized by listening to a few of these episodes, of continuous improvement. So anything that you guys would like to learn more on or things that I could do better on, please let me know. And if you could share it with just one friend who you think that one of these episodes can help them with, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much. Now, let's get to the show. Hey Kyle, how are you?
I'm great, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you joining in. I know we talked a little bit before and you're on the other side of the country. I'm in Atlanta, you're on the West Coast up in Washington, but it's the power of Zoom, right? You get to communicate with people all across the world.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Exactly. So for those who don't know a little bit about you, kind of give us a little bit of an overview of you and what Sage Mindset is.
Yeah. So a little backstory here. In 2005, I was going to Cal Poly, which is a school in California. It's mostly known for architecture and business, and I was doing neither because I guess I wasn't smart enough at the time. So I was just in school for exercise science, which is more like personal training, PE, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was lost, very confused at what the heck to do with myself. And ironically, I had gone on a hike. There's a peak out there. It's not very tall, but a lot of people hiked it, and we did it all the time. And there's a lot of poison oak in California, and I'm fairly allergic to it. And because I'm stupid sometimes, I walked off the trail with a bunch of friends, and we blazed a trail through a bunch of poison oaks. So the poison oak was from my toes to my neck. I was covered in it. I was super itchy. It was a nightmare. I was behind in school by about 2 classes, and it was my senior year. So I was just a mess. And it was such a great reflection of the reality of my life. I was behind in school. I was covered in poison oak. I was 30 pounds overweight. Everything was a dumpster fire in my life at the time. And previously I had gone on a missions trip to India, and one of the guys that was on the trip lives in San Luis Obispo. And he asked me if I wanted to be part of this men's mentoring program. So when I got that phone call from him, I said yes, because I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the men's mentoring program, and I lived at the facility with these guys that are 18 and 25 years old, and they're off track in life. And so we helped them get back on track in life through creating what we call the life map. I actually have a book that I wrote about the program / the concept of life map. In that time, to keep the story short here, in that time, I had about 8 years of mentorship underneath a business leader that started the program, bankrolled the whole thing, and he retired at 50 and had run multiple successful businesses and had retired young and wanted to leave a legacy that mattered. And so he was, and he did, and I'm part of that legacy. But I thought, well, hey, I want to do the same thing. I want to make an impact like he is. So I jumped through some jobs that I didn't like very much, and then got exposed to leadership development, personality assessments, et cetera. And I remember sitting at my desk in an HR job going, I think I'm done with this. And so I committed to being done. I gave my notice and waited for a little bit so they could replace me, and started my business. And in that process, I said, wait, I want to be able to sell the thing that I created and do whatever the heck I want with it, and not be under the restraints of someone else. And
Right.
so I came up with Sage, and I could tell you more about that in a minute, but that's how I got to Sage, was that kind of that journey and those experiences.
Yeah, and of course we're going to dive completely into Sage and that whole mindset and the framework, but it seems that a lot of the stories come from not necessarily rock bottom, but like a big piece of your life being like you have to step back and look like, what am I doing here, right? And then you start to make progress towards it. Is that what you felt like you needed to do in order to turn your life around? Or if you can turn back the clock, would you have been able to stop yourself before, you blazed that trail in the poison oak?
I think that the mistakes that I've made in the past have made me who I am, just like everybody else.
Hmm.
And I don't think I'd return if I had a receipt for those mistakes. I don't think I'd bring it back to the store. I would keep the receipt, and I'd look at it and be like, wow, I'm really proud of that purchase or that
Right.
mistake in this case, because it shaped me to who I am. And if I hadn't been so, maybe quote desperate in that moment when I got that phone call from John, I'm not sure that I would have said yes. I may have been scared to say yes because I was woefully underqualified to be in that
Hmm.
role in that organization, and really underqualified the whole time that I was in the organization. Fortunately, I had great mentorship, but I wouldn't want to return the receipt for sure.
Yeah, and I agree. And mentors they see potential in you before you do. And we talked about that in a previous episode. A link will be in the show notes there. I've been my career is similar, like where I didn't know where I was gonna go. And a mentor said that you should probably do this because he saw that I might be good at Excel, and that launched a 4 or 5 year data analytics journey for me that I ended up falling in love with before doing the podcast and eventually leaving corporate. But I didn't see that at the time, and mentors can really pull you out of stuff like that. So it's awesome that it's helped you as well. But let's talk about the SAGE mindset. And first of all, what does it stand for? And I think we'll start there and we'll go from wherever it takes us.
Yeah. So when I quit that job in HR, like I said, I wanted to do something that was my own, but I didn't have anything of my own at the time. And had been thinking about, for the first probably 3 months of the business, I was thinking about what's a leadership framework that I could apply, that's something that I've learned from in my experience with other people, that I can glean from people external to me, that kind of thing. And I had all these broken acronyms, just three S's and a H and a T, and nothing really stuck. And I love
Mhm.
acronyms. I love alliteration. I like that kind of stuff because it sticks with my memory. I don't have the greatest of memories, and I know some other people don't either. And so these types of mnemonics and whatnot are really helpful. And so I knew I wanted that. And like I said, I've been working on it for 3 months. And one morning, early in the morning, I woke up to a voice, and I believe it was God telling me this, saying excuse me, self-awareness. And when that happened, it was like the click for me. I went, oh, that's it. And so I jumped out of bed, it's just in my boxers, and sprinted into the kitchen. And I was shivering from 3 to 7, just scrambling and writing as fast as I could all the things that came to my mind about this first word and then the rest. So that first word is self-awareness. And then the second is accountability. And then you have growth, and then you have empowerment. So that's the simplest version of Sage, but it was rooted in kind of this divine, I would say, appointment, and all these other opportunities coming together to that point where I'm shivering at my kitchen table and just stoked that finally this idea, after chewing on it forever, was clear, and I knew that it would work. And I was just happy it was an acronym. And then when I started to study what SAGE meant, I went, oh my gosh, this is way better than just a
Mhm.
simple acronym that's memorable. So that was a cool experience.
Yeah, and it's good that mnemonics help, you commit something to memory, and Sage is just perfect, it's your calming aspect. And self-awareness is something that you need to be in a calm state of mind. I feel like, in order to really be able to reflect. If you're always hyper and you're always going on the go, you don't let your mind wander, then you won't really realize things like that. You won't be able to have what you call that 4 hour brainstorming session where you're just continuously writing, because your mind is always thinking about what's next. So how do you slow things down in a way where you can be self-aware? Because I totally agree as well. It's the first step for any type of growth.
Okay, great. The timing of that question couldn't be better. So on Sunday this week, I'm supposed to meet with these guys that we basically work with each other to get better at coaching. It's part of a class that we're in. And we meet every Sunday at 4 p.m. to have a conversation about that, coach one another, et cetera. And it was just my middle kid and I at home, where my wife and the other kids were at their cousin's house. And to not make the story too long, I had scooped out some coals from our wood burning stove and put them in a bucket. And I told my child, I said to Haley, my middle kid, just play over here. Mom will be home in a little bit. I'm going to go upstairs and do my meeting. So 10 seconds before the meeting starts, I hear a super calm, gentle knock on my door. And I'm like, what do you need? And she's like, Dad, I need to show you something. And I said, right now? She's like, yeah, right now. Super chill, right? And I'm going, she does this. She'll interrupt and be very calm about it. So I didn't suspect anything. So I go out the office door and walk down the stairs and take a ride into my family room. And there is this bucket on fire in the middle of my living room.
Nice.
And I went, oh crap. Okay, Haley, you go over here. And I ran to the garage, grabbed the fire extinguisher. After fumbling it for a little bit, I finally got it off the thing there. And I came in and I put the fire out, and I damaged the carpet a little bit, but fortunately it didn't do anything else.
That's awesome.
But the message for me was, you're going too fast. There was these coals that I put into that bucket that were a little bit lit up. They still had a little bit of fire to them, and I put them in there anyway. And knowing that I shouldn't, knowing that maybe it could cause a fire, but why would it? It was in a bucket. But it did. They were so hot that it started a fire in the bucket. And of course, I'm an idiot and I used a plastic bucket instead of a metal bucket. So that's another story. But all that to say, when we're going too fast, we miss those little details. And I think that's where the accountability part comes in. But we miss those little details. So for me, slowing down is breathing. It's taking the time to breathe. And I use the Wim Hof approach. If your listeners haven't heard of it, essentially you breathe 40 times. And then you hold your breath for as long as you can. And it's pretty remarkable for helping you to slow down. Lately, I've been taking the end of my showers are cold showers. So that is a really interesting experience, but it refreshes you in a very different way, and it slows you down in a very different way. One other method I'll share is what I call the magic of transitions. Sammy, when you and I are done with this interview, you're gonna quit recording and you're gonna do something different. You're gonna transition to a different activity. I'm gonna probably get up and go drink some water or go say hi to my dog or something like that. But regardless, we're both transitioning. And I believe in those many, many, many transitions that we have every day, especially when we're walking from one activity to another, like getting into your car or leaving the office, whatever. Those are great opportunities to do one of two things: to shut your mind up and listen. What is the world telling you? What happened in that most recent experience? What is it, the message that's being delivered to you that you wouldn't hear if you wouldn't slow down and just shut up and listen? And you close your mouth, you close your mind, you just not close your mind, but you try to just absorb. So that's the silence, that's the being quiet. And then there's the reflective side, which is more analyzing the previous situation, what you just stepped away from. So either you listen or you analyze, or you reflect, could be another way to look at it. And that's another great way to slow down, because how many times do we get up and we grab our phone right after we get up?
Yep.
We get in the car, we grab our phone and type in the song we want to listen to, or we text somebody. Or no, don't do that. First of all, don't put your phone in your pocket. Don't do that. Take it out of your pocket because it's too easy to get. Put it somewhere else. And then slow down and listen, or slow down and reflect. And you don't have to do it every transition, but if you can do it 5 or 6 times a day, I guarantee that will slow you down. So those are 2 ways that I've found help slow me down: the breathing and and the transitions.
Yeah, and I really like that, because when I used to do that for when COVID closed down, for example, and the gyms were closed, I obviously enjoy working out a lot, and it's one of the categories of this podcast, but you couldn't do that. So I would do some of that transitions where every time I would leave a room or enter, I would do 10, 20 push-ups, 20 sit-ups. And then, you do that, I don't know, 100 times, it feels like a day when you're getting water or going to the bathroom or something. Turns out you're doing a lot of push-ups and sit-ups every day. So it adds
100%.
up, and it's a very good idea to just kind of force that pause. You don't notice it, but it's those small incremental things that we do all the time during the day. And it gives you the ability to look back and like, I did a lot today of reflecting, or I did a lot of dealing with my transition. So I think I'm going to apply that to my day as well. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it's easy too. It's nothing, it doesn't require 45 minutes of yoga poses, which are beautiful.
Hmm.
Go ahead, do that. But if you don't have that time, you can take 30 seconds to reflect. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying in those transitions, to take, like you said, to the bathroom, right? That's a
Hmm.
great time to do it. How many times do we have epiphanies while we're showering or peeing?
Hmm.
All the time. People talk about that all the time.
Yep.
It's hilarious. In fact, my wife gifted me with this notepad that you can write on in the shower, so that their little slogan is not letting your brilliant ideas wash down the drain or something like that. So,
Yeah, that's perfect.
yep, exactly.
Nice. Now, a quick word for today's show sponsor. I'm normally not a fan of nice clothes. I like comfort over style, especially because I like being active often. Habits 365 is a brand that does both. The reason I'm excited to partner with them is because their vision is in line with this podcast. Their whole message is to preach consistent improvement by creating and maintaining continuous habits 365 days a year. That sounds exactly like what I like to preach, 1% better every day. It also helps that they promote positivity around important topics like mental health and wellness, which is one of the 5 categories, as well as social justice and much more. The fact that they employ mostly millennials and are run by 2 people who are in their 20s, like myself, is an added bonus. If you're interested in supporting the show as well as getting some apparel, feel free to enjoy the code FINANCEZILLA for 15% off online purchases by using the link in the show notes. That's FINANCEZILLA for 15% off online purchases. Guys, water is super important for maintaining physical health, one of the 5 categories of the Successful Millennials podcast. Doctors always recommend at least 8 cups a day, and for every cup of coffee or tea, you should probably add another cup of water. Throw in things like pre-workout, creatine, and the fact that everybody just has different hydration needs based on, their body weight and gender, physical activity, etc. You should probably drink well over that 8 cups of water. Me personally, I drink like a gallon and a half a day. I just love water. I drink it with every meal. I drink it when I work out. I don't drink juices or anything else. That's why I'm excited to partner with the Coldest Water. They make water bottles that can preserve cold water and ice that won't even melt for 36 plus hours. Especially in the summertime heat like now, these bottles that come in different sizes are a great way to keep your water cold when running errands, hiking, or just so that you don't have to keep going to the fridge every now and then. Enjoy a personal code for 10% off on online purchases by going to the link in the bio and using the code FINANCEZILLA. That's FINANCEZILLA for 10% off online purchases. Now back to the show. I want to talk about growth mindset. I think that's part of something that's talked about a lot. It feels like it's overused even at this day and age, but it's something that is extremely important because you need to have not only you're self-aware and you're figuring out what's wrong, you hold yourself accountable, which is we'll get into in more detail because I think that's a very big piece. But then how to want to do that is a part of the growth mindset. I feel like forcing yourself to even want to change for the better. What is your stance on growth mindset, and what do you say to people who are like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, let me give you a metaphor for sage, and then we'll talk about growth, because I think it helps to describe what is meant by growth mindset. I believe that all great leaders are sage leaders, per that acronym that I described. And I like to use the visual of a house, of a leadership house. And when you think about the pillars of that house, the self-awareness is the foundation of that house. The stronger the foundation, the more self-aware you are, the larger the building you can put on top of that foundation. If you have low self-awareness as a leader, you can't build much of a leadership house. There's not too many people that can go under your roof because you just don't have a good foundation. So more self-awareness, bigger leadership influence. Growth is the growth is the walls and the roof. And the bigger the foundation, the more walls and roof you can put on there. But the beauty of a growth mindset is sometimes we can remodel our leadership. We can go, you know what? I actually want to create another room over here. I want to make a bigger home. So I'm going to remodel, blow the roof off of what I think is possible in my leadership and put a new one on, right? So you make your building bigger, your leadership house bigger. Empowerment is the windows and the doors. It's the idea that when people are under your leadership, they can also look out into other potential opportunities for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also step out and go into those opportunities by walking out the door. And as an empowering leader, you want them to do that. That's the goal. And then the other direction is people can look into your leadership through those windows, and they can step into that leadership too. You're welcoming people. So they open that door and walk in. Accountability is the nails that holds it all together. So no matter how perfectly you structure and build your foundation, if you don't have accountability, if you get bumped into, or the big bad wolf comes along and starts to blow on your house, it's going to blow down. But you have accountability in it, and it holds it together. So that's the metaphor for leadership and how I describe the Sage House. When it comes to growth, the main thing is strengths. It's all about strengths. If you understand your strengths and you lean into those, and you manage your weaknesses, you're going to find far greater success. And that's really that's a strengths finder concept. That's a Gallup concept. So it's nothing new to people, but it's reality, because there's too many stories of people trying to get really good at public speaking, or trying to get really good at a sport, or whatever example you can come up with, that they're just banging their head against the wall because that's not really their strengths. It's not where they belong. And a growth mindset is first leveraging that. There's a lot more to it, but I would say that's the first piece: is think strengths, manage weaknesses.
Yeah, and I've taken the Clifton strengths. I love it. And I took it twice because I didn't want to believe it the first time, and I got the same exact result. And I see why. Like, I'm 4 out of my 5 top themes are in the execution phase. I get energetic when I cross off things off a to-do list. Like, some people don't like that. I need to see myself crossing it off for me to feel good. And you see why you're wired things a certain way. I think it's the best personality test somebody can take, or strengths assessment test from Clifton. So I love it. But you talked a lot about knowing your strengths, and that's like clarity. And I think as a leader, clarity and confidence are the 2 big things, right? You talk about that a lot as well. Your confidence can come from your clarity, but I want to take clarity first, because some people may not know their strengths, and that could lead to imposter syndrome. That could lead to not believing in yourself, or being trepidatious. And then it's hard for people to lead somebody where they don't know where they're going. So how do you build the clarity, one, as a leader, but as an entrepreneur and somebody who necessarily doesn't have somebody to gain that clarity from? They have to provide the vision itself. That's a whole different level. That's like clarity on steroids. So let's just take leadership in the corporate world, or leadership in your personal life, and how to build that clarity. And we'll dive into entrepreneurship after.
Sure. Feedback. It's really difficult to get clarity to really, it's a self-awareness piece as well, but to get clarity about your life, about your business, about your limits, your strengths, all that stuff, unless you receive feedback. And for a lot of people, you might be thinking talking to other people and having conversations with other people. Yes, it is that, but it's also questions. Feedback, the best feedback are questions. That's the best feedback, because it makes you think in a different way, and it engages your subconscious in a way that is much more powerful than someone just telling you what to do or telling you what they see. Now, that has its place, but when you ask yourself the right questions, or you get asked the right questions by great mentors, and we can talk about that part in the accountability, because there's a really neat thing that people can do to have some powerful mentors in their life, but it's that feedback. Ask yourself great questions. If you don't know what questions to ask, first thing first, don't ask why questions. Start by skipping the why questions. Why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why do I say that? No. What makes me say that? What makes me interested in this? What makes me act in this way? How come I do it this way, et cetera, et cetera. So you're asking what and how questions of yourself, and then finding other people that are willing to ask you questions too. So obviously I'm a coach, and so I love questions. So I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
biased, but it is feedback. To get clarity, you got to go with feedback for number one. Another
Yeah.
one,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
sorry, another one I would toss out there, and some people resist it and some people love it, is writing. People don't journal enough, but journaling is taking your brain and putting it on paper and then looking at it from a meta perspective, from a third party perspective. And it's extremely easy and
Mhm.
powerful at the same time. So in fact, I'm creating an app that allows people to do that and
Nice.
measures the progress, because I've been journaling since I was 16, and I have all of it still that I can look at. And it's extremely, I'm too dramatic with that word, but it's really helpful.
Yeah.
So write and get feedback. Those would be the really powerful things to do. And when you write, it doesn't need to be some novel or drama or silly. Write a sentence, write whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Just write, and then it'll take shape on its own. And there's all kinds of resources to look up what to write or what questions to answer, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I've started to pick up journaling. I'm not very consistent. Definitely haven't been doing it for as many years as you. And I do see if I could start doing it a couple of times in a row, then you start to, like you said, it takes shape in what you want to write about, and your mind just wanders. But you said not to ask why questions, and I agree with that because it encourages a defensive mindset from both the
Yep.
person who's providing feedback and yourself. So you definitely avoid that. But you mentioned about trying to find mentors, and I love mentors. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You've had some great mentors. Where can you go to find mentorship and convince them or provide something to them so that they can help you without feeling like it's sort of some sort of trade-off?
Let me give you the scientific or the survey or study reason why to do this. First, when it comes to achieving what you want to achieve, desiring to do something equals 10% likelihood of success. That's it. It's really, really poor. If you desire to achieve it and you set a due date, it jumps to 25%. If you then make a plan, it jumps to 40%. If you start to tell people, you get to 65%. And then if you engage people purposefully on a weekly basis, it jumps to 95%, because you have the plan, you have the due date, you've committed, and then you've told people about it. So now all of a sudden there's this really significant accountability, and there's also this integrity. Your integrity is in question here
Mm-hmm.
because you've told so many people, and you're talking to some of those people every single week. And that is extremely helpful. So sometimes it doesn't even matter who the people are if you're pretty self-motivated.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to tell people. I wrote my first book based on that method of passive accountability, is what I call it. I have a acronym that I use called PASS, passive active structures and self accountability.
Mm-hmm.
But the passive is just telling a bunch of people about what you want to achieve. And then they come to you over time. Some of them will, and say, hey, what's going on with that book you wanted to write? Or what's
Mm-hmm.
going on with the weight loss you talked about? And it's great because there's no pressure on them. They just care about you and they
Mm-hmm.
ask. But it's a lot of pressure on you because
Mm-hmm.
if you tell 30 people, maybe 3 of them will reach back out to you, hopefully more.
Mm-hmm.
But at a minimum, some of them will reach back. So that's one way to do it that's really simple, and you don't have to go find that guru. But find that guru if you can,
Mm-hmm.
and put them on your board of advisors. And what I mean by that is it's a group of 5 to 7 people that you put on your board, your imaginary board, that you go to consistently. And they don't have to be present in your life. They could be across the country because of Zoom, and they could be dead because you could read bios, and those people could be your board of advisors as you read about them. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have to even be alive. Now, of course, ideally, most of the people are alive on your board, but it's okay to if you look up to certain people, then put them on your board, and that's really powerful. I think the easiest way to find people to put on your board is you figure out the industry that you want to connect with, and then ask. Be brave. Ask. Say, hey, can we connect from time to time? You don't have to say, hey, can you be on my board? But reach out and say, can we connect from time to time? I have a mentor that is one of the highest selling agents in Affleck. He lives in my hometown and he mentors me every other Wednesday. Fantastic.
Awesome.
How did I get access to him? Well, he goes to the church that I go to, but I didn't know that. But I asked my pastor, I said, hey, I want to be mentored by someone that's in the business world, but also has a relationship with God. Do you know anybody? And he said, I know just the guy. And I said, great. 3 weeks later, we had our first meeting, and now we've been meeting for several weeks now. All I had to do was ask. And I didn't know who I was going to meet with,
Mm-hmm.
but I got this guy because of it. A lot of people shoot too short. They
Mm-hmm.
don't reach high enough, and then they get disappointed in who they end up being mentoring by. And the third idea is find a coach. Find a
Mm-hmm.
great coach that has a record of being a great coach, and they can help keep you accountable as well. Surround yourself with someone that their sole purpose when they're interacting with you is to help you be better at
Mm-hmm.
being you and at doing business or whatever it is your focus is. So those would be the three angles.
Yeah, and I think what holds some people back is the confidence aspect of who am I to ask somebody who maybe way above me in the vision of where you're trying to shoot for, and then I can't ask that person's help. So, how would you tell somebody how to improve their confidence so that they don't shoot their shot too short via either mentorship or business ideas or any really venture? Confidence is a huge aspect that really, if you can handle your self-confidence, you will probably have a way higher chance of converting your goals than any other aspect, in my opinion.
I agree. I think when you're get to that place of fear about reaching out to certain people, the classic is they're human, so are you. So
Mhm.
what is to worry about for one? And I know that's a little cliche, but it's true. They're just a human. And if you reach out to that person and there's three things that could happen. They could say no.
Mhm.
And they could say no because they suck and they don't really care about serving other people and you don't want to
Mhm.
interact with them anyway.
Correct.
So forget it. Or they could say no because they're too busy, and that's fine. We can respect that. Like that's totally reasonable. Or they could say yes. They could say yes, and then you better be ready to say what you want from them.
Mhm.
Because people like that want to know what you want from them. They want to know, why do you want to work with? They want to ask that why question. Why do you want to work with me? What are you expecting to get from this mentorship, from this coaching relationship? So be prepared to go in with answers to those questions. Because if you're not prepared for that, then your confidence is going to be low, because if they're worth their salt, then they're going to ask you, what do you want from this?
Mhm.
And if
What do
they
you hope
don't
to
ask
gain
you,
from it?
yeah. And if they don't ask you, you probably don't want to work with them. You don't want to be
Mhm.
mentored by them because they're not thinking enough ahead for your sake.
Mhm.
So I'd say that be prepared by knowing what you want from that mentorship. And if they're not willing to give you the time because they're just not being, not because of their time, but because they're just kind of being a jerk because they're not willing to serve other people, you don't want to be mentored by them. That's not the example you want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's some of the first things that my mentor told me was in presentation or in anything, the devil's in the details. We've heard this word 1,000 times. So you just be the expert in that. Learn all the details, and then you'll not be thrown aside. You won't be caught off guard when you're presenting or when you're talking or when you're even asking about something. So for me, that's learning the subject matter in its fullest or as much as I can comprehend it gives me the confidence to be able to talk about or present on it or whatever I need to do. So definitely doing your prep work is something that builds confidence, I think, as well. I want to shift towards the PASS acronym that you talked about for accountability and the levels of accountability. You mentioned passive by just telling everybody, getting the message out, putting it in the world, the secret. We've heard about this in many different forms, but the other three parts of that, how would you describe the levels of accountability and which one's most effective in which area?
Yeah. So I'll give you what pass means first. So it's passive, active, structures, and self. And I know I think I mentioned that already, but passive, active, structures, and self. And passive, we already described. So active accountability is something, it's what we just talked about, which is meeting with my mentor every other week. It's meeting with my buddy every other Tuesday and talking about specific things. There's an agreement between you and that other person that you're going to talk about very specific things. So they're holding you accountable to very specific things. With my mentor, it's my relationship with my wife, it's my business, and it's also slowing down per back to what we talked about before. Those are some things that we purposefully talk about. And he has a alliteration that he uses that I can't remember off the top of my head, but he uses that to help us to stay focused. With my friend, it's active up more on the spiritual side of things and on the relational side of things as well. And it's that's all there is to it. We meet every other week for an hour to hour and a half, and we have these conversations, but it does amazing things for us. And then on the professional side of things, I have a mastermind that I call the Sage Accountability Mastermind. And essentially, it's groups of three people plus me that we meet together and we talk about business and we keep each other accountable to the goals that we want to achieve. And we're always pushing harder and higher with our goals wisely, because you don't want to be pushing too much because then you get overwhelmed, but we push harder and wiser. And between the four of us, it's returned, one of the guys at 41% increase in his business, and another guy is signing $50,000 contracts. The other guy is he quit his Costco job. He's going full-time in insurance. It's really incredible what it's done for us, but it's because we meet every other week and update each other on what the heck is going on and have conversations, coach around that topic. So that's active accountability. And those guys are on my board. They don't know it, and they're on it. And if they start to give me crappy advice, I'm going to kick them off my board and I'm not going to listen.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they don't even have to be in your same industry, and they could still hold you accountable just through conversation and forcing you to have those constant updates. So for those who are listening who think they need somebody exactly in what they're doing to keep you accountable, that's not the case at all.
Yeah. And it's really nice because the ideas come outside the box for me. I come from the coach angle. I come from mindsets and personalities angle, but the chiropractor comes from this holistic health angle and so on and so forth. So that's really helpful. So the next is the structures. So structures it's simple as well. Your phone is a great tool for this purpose. You put reminders in your phone to keep you accountable to doing certain things. But the problem with the phone is we're constantly receiving notifications. I did some research on this, and it's 65, I think it's average about 65 notifications a day for people. That's a nightmare. So instead of talking about using your phone to get notifications, I think what's even better for the structures thing is turn off all notifications except for phone calls and text messages. Everything else can go off. Here's why. I know you're going to check your email again. I know you're going to check your social media. I know you're going to check your LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need to have it alert you, and don't do the sports scores things. Don't do especially don't do the news thing. You definitely don't need that news garbage. I don't care which side you're on. You don't want that crap coming at you when you don't want it coming at you. Agreed. So with structures, a lot of it is actually elimination, but the tool is definitely the phone. The tool is a contract that you sign with yourself, that you mail to other people, that you send to somebody else and create an agreement between the two of you, and you sign on the line that says, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to do this. A really cool example is there's this coach that he makes the client sign a check that's worth, that's a high dollar value, 10,000 or more. And he signs the check and gives it to the coach, but it's written to the opposite political party. That's a great structure. That's going to make that dude or that gal freaking do the assignments. Because if they don't do the assignments, then the coach cashes the check, gives it to the opposite political party. And I love that. I think that's great. And he's only had to do it once. So it works.
Yeah.
That's another structure. The list can go on, but mostly structures are tools that you use to remind you automatically to do something or to hold you accountable to it. Another real simple example is put your gym bag in your car so that when you go to work, it's already there.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yep. Be prepared. Then lastly, it's self. Ultimately, all of this it aids in helping us accomplish what we want to accomplish, right? You put the whole pass together, the bigger the goal, the bigger the achievement, the more pieces of this pass you want to use. If it's small, then you can just be relying on yourself. But if it gets big and big and bigger, you definitely need to deploy all these different quote tricks. But it's a matter of, the idea is, can you be impeccable with your word? That's self accountability. That's that piece of the equation. Because if your yes is yes and your no is no, then you're accountable. If it's not, then you're not. And no matter what other things you have in place, if your yes is not yes, your no is not no, then none of this stuff is that valuable. So you have to start with yourself. It happens to be at the end of the acronym, but you really do have to start with yourself.
One of my favorite quotes is say what you mean what you say, right?
Yep.
It's essentially saying that same thing, building that discipline to be able to do what you say you want to do. And if you don't want to do it, then don't say that you want to do it, right? And it helps you be in line with your true form as well. So I like that it's part of your acronym as well, because I think it's huge for accountability and discipline for you to be able to grow. If somebody was listening to this and they're about to go on their errands, they're about to go on with the rest of their day, like you said, they're transitioning towards the next step of their life, what would you have them do if it's just one tip, one thing, so they can take with them right now?
Close your eyes for 30 seconds and give your mind a rest. Slow the heck down. Close your eyes. Like literally, if you're driving, don't do that. But once you park, close your eyes and breathe for 30 seconds. You don't have to try to do anything in those 30 seconds. Just close your eyes and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've done that where I feel like I'm spinning, because I am spinning sometimes. We're so busy that we're just spinning and spinning and going and going. And people, we call it a whirlwind on purpose. So when you close your eyes, you feel like you're in a whirlwind. You're still spinning. It's like we're dizzy.
Mm-hmm.
So the simplest thing you can do that requires no energy, no effort really, is close your eyes. And then when you're done, put a fat smile on your face. Like, be happy, put a smile on your face, no matter what the heck is going on. And it's corny, I know, but joy goes a long way. So smile and, close your eyes and then open your eyes and smile. And if someone looks at you like you're a moron, who cares?
Right. Agreed. I'm definitely going to do that after this recording. So I appreciate the tips. And if people want to learn more about you or get some of your coaching, where can they reach out to you, Kyle?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, but I would say GilletteSolutions.com is my website. I will also soon have SageMindset.com open. It's in development right now. That's the best way to reach me, though, GilletteSolutions.com. And I've got a podcast, Sage Mindset Podcast. So check that out. It's on all the channels, just like this one is. So those are the best angles to get a hold of me.
Okay. And if they want to grab a copy of your book, and we'll throw the link in there as well for everybody. And I hope you guys reach out and learn more, because to have that sage house is something that I think would really go a long way for everybody's just mindset in terms of just mental health. Even having that things in order and being able to commit to what you want to do is a very empowering thing.
Yep, 100%.
Well, thanks for your time, Kyle. I appreciate you joining.
Thank you.
That concludes another episode of the Successful Millennials podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and which tip or trick you picked up on that you'll implement after listening to today's episode. Please don't forget to leave a like or subscribe on whichever podcast streaming platform you're listening to right now. Obviously, we're on all of them. And let me know what topics you'd like to learn more on or ask a guest on. And my email is going to be in the show notes. It's financezilla@gmail.com. That's the best way to reach out to me. If you have Instagram and you prefer to reach out there, I'm also quite active and I'll respond to DMs. It is at financezilla. Again, both of those will be in the show notes. Now, if you're wondering on how I got to where I'm at, where I was able to retire from corporate and kind of do this as well as invest and trade in the stock market, and you would like to learn more, kind of take control of your finances and therefore take control of your life and being able to do what you want to do, being financially independent, reach out to me via either of those ways and ask for that 30-minute free strategy consultation session. The link again will be in the show notes for that, and we can talk about how to live the life you want to live and make money doing it, as well as be comfortable and happy. That's, I think, the goal of everything. That's the reason why I started this podcast and why I do this consulting business. So reach out, let me know if I can help, and apply via the link in the show notes. Until then, talk to you guys next week.